Hello there viewers, and welcome to another edition of F1 Talk. This is episode 28, and in this edition I'll go over the more recent news and of course my preview and predictions for this weekend's German Grand Prix to be held at the Hockenheim circuit. So to kick it off, we'll go for the news, and the main news since the British Grand Prix is that Mark Webber has signed a 1-year contract extension with Red Bull. This seems to be the case with Mark, as he isn't the youngest driver in Formula 1. In fact, he's becoming one of the more experienced drivers in F1, but it seems to be the thing that is done these days, specifically with elder drivers. They sign a contract extension, and it's usually 1 year rolling, so that future drivers can be looked at and brought into the team. He picked a very good time to have these contract talks with Red Bull. He had just won the British Grand Prix, rather convincingly I might add as well, and it always seems to go quite well for him at this sort of time of the year. So he signed the contract extension, 1 more year of Red Bull racing, and at present as I speak he is favourite to win the championship. He has the form that a champion needs right now, and at this stage in his career it would be fantastic for him. I personally like Mr. Webber. He's always been one of my favourites, basically due to the fact that up until he rejoined Red Bull, he was rather unlucky. You have to say that he's one of the most unluckiest drivers in F1, even still now with Red Bull. There seems to be a wide gap between the reliability of the team leader's car and the second driver's car. And that's always been the case. I think it always will be the case. What this does do, though, is leave Lewis Hamilton with less of a choice for his immediate future. Lewis Hamilton, because he would want to stay with a competitive team, has an option now of staying with McLaren or moving to Ferrari, because basically that's all he's got. His contract is up at the end of the season. McLaren anticipate that he will re-sign with them for a longer period, but it's basically Webber's decision to re-sign with Red Bull, and they're happy with him, no problem about that. What it's done is left Hamilton with sort of a difficult decision. McLaren at the moment do not have a championship winning car. They have not had a championship winning car since 2008. And then it was lucky. So McLaren haven't had a championship winning car for a few seasons now, and will that be the deciding factor in Lewis Hamilton's decision? Yes, Fernando Alonso is the championship leader as I speak, and Ferrari have seemed to find more. They've found more as the season's gone on. They've improved the car, they've developed the car. The Red Bull is the best car out there at present, and is working its tyres extremely well. The Ferrari is, I would say, in terms of out of a score of 10, is, I would say, 1.5 behind the Red Bulls. But the McLarens are falling back. Jenson Button's had a terrible season, apart from 2 races where he finished on the podium and won the first race of the season. Since then he's done nothing. He can't make the tyres work, as I explained to you in the last few videos. Lewis Hamilton wants to be in a competitive car. The McLaren is competitive, but not when the Red Bulls are this competitive. It's not leaving him much of a choice. If I was Hamilton at the moment, do you stick around with McLaren for another few seasons while your talents go to waste in a car that cannot win the championship? Because at the moment the McLaren cannot win the title. Do you wait for a car that can be competitive? Do you move to another team? Or this is what I would actually do if I was Hamilton. I would sign a 1-year extension if I was Lewis Hamilton and wait to see if a Red Bull seat becomes available. On to other news now, and the testing crash with Maria Di Vallota at Marussia, where she lost her right eye. Marussia have done a sort of like an autopsy or a post-mortem on the car and have declared that the car was not to blame for the crash. Now, that puts the blame squarely on her shoulders. Now, is that fair from the team? I don't know. What's your thoughts on this? Does that make the case for females should not be in Formula 1 cars? Who knows? What I will say is this. It was an accident, a horrible accident, and she probably won't be doing much motorsport in the future. The Marussia car, I believe, is the worst in the field. They are the worst team in Formula 1, and they would do very well to keep hold of any publicity, good or bad. Yes, this is very bad publicity. It's saying that their car is dangerous to drive, but it's also saying that their car was not to blame for this horrible accident and that the driver, Di Vallota, was. That's basically what Marussia are saying, so we'll see what develops there. As we know, the Olympic Games is due to start in the next week or so. It's intended, or I wouldn't say intended, that after the Olympic Games, that the athletics stadium will be used, either by a football team trying to get a bigger stadium or whatever. But now Formula 1 is interested, specifically the rights holders of the British Grand Prix. Now, the Silverstone circuit has signed 2009 signed something like a 17 or 16 year agreement, I was reading earlier, with regards to keeping the British Grand Prix alive and keeping it going. But apparently, British Grand Prix bosses, not Silverstone bosses, British Grand Prix bosses are interested in the site where the Olympic Stadium is. And they have put in a bid to gain access to this this stadium, when the Olympics is over. So they're another interested party. Should they be successful in their bid, obviously the stadium will come down and we may well have a street circuit around the streets of London. So we'll see what happens there. Ross Brawn has stated that the Mercedes GP team aren't consistent enough. Yes, Nico Rosberg won the Chinese Grand Prix earlier on in the year. Michael Schumacher with a brilliant podium a few races back. But now they're beginning to finish 8th and 15th, in places like that. And they should be, getting consistent podiums and decent points finishes. They're just not getting the points finishes that they expect. Yes, qualifying is highly competitive these days, and the first, say, 16 places on the grid, or first 10 or 15 places on the grid, are separated by, say, 2.5 seconds. It's really difficult for a team like Mercedes to grow, especially if both drivers give their all and they don't get anywhere. Sort of a little bit like Jenson Button. They don't have the consistency they want. They're struggling with the tyres, it seems, because the Mercedes are usually the first cars in the pits, and they have been since Mercedes took over the Brawn name in 2010. And we'll just have to see how the team develops the car to try and counter this problem with consistency. So that's basically it. Onto the preview and the predictions for this weekend's Grand Prix. We're back at Hockenheim. Remember, the Hockenheim and the Nürburgring alternate in terms of years. So this year it's Hockenheim, next year Nürburgring, and so on until that sort of contract runs out. It's not a bad plan alternating tracks for the Grand Prix, because you don't get the same track every year. Alright, it's not boring to see the same track every year, but at least in this term, more tracks get a fair shake. I'm understanding that Britain's obviously interested in it, as I've talked about with the Olympic Stadium possibly becoming an F1 track. Apparently Spain are interested in this. So one year we would have the Valencia Street Circuit, another year we would have Catalonia. But as I say, we're back at Hockenheim this year. Since the track redesign in 2002 from Hermann Tilke, the track is a darn sight shorter, and the lap time is shorter to the tune of about 20 seconds due to the long, from the days of the long straights and chicanes. So, and the track's been like this for almost 10 years. In fact, it will be 10 years this year. So, the track's been the same for quite a while now. Drivers have gotten used to it, and there's one or two longish straights, but the majority of the track is a lot more compressed. It's they have a lot more corners on it now, as you can see, and basically I think a track like this favours the Ferraris, especially that of Fernando Alonso. So I'm going to go for Alonso pole and the win this weekend. The Red Bulls are, pick of the bunch, obviously, and I think what I've just said is a bold statement. What do you think? Do you think the Ferraris will be better suited to this type of track, or will the Red Bulls, find the few tenths they need to be utterly dominant like they have the last couple of seasons? Will Vettel return to the forefront? He's had an iffy couple of races. Yes, he got the podium finish last time out. He will want a victory more than life itself, I think, this weekend, obviously, because it is the German Grand Prix. Mercedes will want to do well. Will McLaren be more competitive this weekend? Will Maldonado not have a crash this weekend? That's a very good question. I'm looking for him to have a crash and possibly get kicked out of Formula One. Since his win in Spain, he's not been the same driver. He is nowhere near the same driver he was when he won in Spain. Will all the teams that need to do well do well? Will one of the three newer teams score a decent point? I don't think so. It's going to be an interesting race. So there's my predictions, there's my preview, and there's another episode of F1 Talk done. I will post up my thoughts about the race, and of course my review of the race after the race has taken place, obviously. And because I will be watching the highlights, I won't see everything that the race has to offer, but I will see the big moments. So I thank you for watching, as you always do, and I'll see you next time.